So our theme for the rest of the show will be any of the films that inspired you or always stayed with you from the 90s period. So I believe you have like a top five. So should we start from number five going down to number one being the best one in your top five, and just basically you can tell us, why and explain about it and what stood out for you, etc., etc. So what's your number five top
So I mean,
number?
the order of these is kind of interchangeable, to be honest.
Okay, that's fine.
I'm kind of going with my career significance because these are kind of the films that sort of affected me as a filmmaker and and more as a writer, really.
Sure.
And so my number five, I'm going to go with Pulp Fiction.
Of course. Why Pulp Fiction?
It was the first film that truly kind of spoke to me as a writer, and because Quentin Tarantino was a writer director, and that was obviously I'd seen directors write before, but he was so massively a writer director, and so it kind of made it seem possible that I could do that as well, and just the words, the dialogue, the fact that someone was allowed to say so many things, to use so much dialogue, and to be funny and disgusting and violent and things all in the same film, and dramatic and sad, and so I just kind of I was fairly young then, I was like 15, I think, when it came out or whatever.
Because he must have been in his 20s, no? I mean, I remember he was
Tarantino. He was 26, I think, when he made Reservoir
which is
Dogs.
really young, isn't it? For someone who's basically breaking into the mainstream Hollywood, so young as
Yeah,
well.
but it's mad because at the time it didn't seem young to me. It seemed like, oh, I've got loads of time to get up to that level, and it took me longer. But yeah, because at the time, like Robert Rodriguez was 23 when he made El Mariachi, and
Oh my God, I
like
didn't realize
Stoltenberg was in his 20s, I think, when he did Sex, Lies, and Videotape. So all that lot were really young, and they were kind of this amazing, and that's why I love the 90s, because it was such this new wave of independent filmmakers and so many writer directors. So many like spectacular filmmakers that are still geniuses to this day, and that changed how film was made in those ways. I mean, Steven Soderbergh, camera operates and writes and directs and edits and everything, and Tarantino was wrote, directed, edited stuff as well, and it was just in Rodriguez, he did it all for no money, and Kevin Smith, he wrote, directed, edited. It was just this amazing sort of the beginning of the DIY filmmaker.
Yeah. Which is a shame that doesn't happen anymore, isn't it now? It's all about franchise and what brings the money in. And it just kind of, I mean, I remember from the 90s, generally, there was such a wide range of genres. And like you said, that was kind of when the indie things sort of started happening more.
Well, yeah, it's like I was just reading a book about the 90s, about 1999 specifically, called the best year of film ever. And it's all the films from 1999, because he's positing that was the last wave of true originality in Hollywood, where originality was the predominant thing that was in cinemas, rather than now, which it is kind of just franchise cinema.
Yeah.
Back then, you had aside from the ones I just mentioned, who were earlier in the 90s, you had the late 90s was the emergence of like Wes Anderson and M. Night Shyamalan, and who else was it on the list? There was a lot of people coming up with original material that wasn't a sequel, wasn't based on a pre-existing thing,
Yeah.
And 90s was just amazing for all that. It was just full of it, and so yeah, that's why it was such an inspiring time for me.
And Tarantino's always been really good, isn't he? With just he writes this incredible. He's kind of got a vernacular way of writing in that it's so fresh and it's so kind of natural flowing. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't feel, it's like an everyday conversation, which is really good at capturing, because it's very difficult, isn't it, writing dialogue between several people for a film?
Yeah, I mean, dialogue's what I love. I love dialogue, and Tarantino was. I mean, I had to kind of pull myself away from copying Quentin Tarantino too much in my early days when I was just going off on mad, 10-page long monologues and stuff. And but I mean, where he just invents these worlds, and the ways people speak within them is just this wonderful kind of this wonderful stylized yet incredibly sort of truthful speech.
Is there anything you want to say about it, or do you want to go on to number 4?
I mean, everyone knows about Pulp Fiction, so let's go to number 4.
Okay, so what's your number 4?
My number 4 is Fargo.
Ah, I love Fargo.
I mean, it was a difficult choice because like the Coen Brothers had a very good 90s
run,
Fargo,
didn't they?
Fargo is so good, and it's the one I rewatched the most, and I think it's like, for me, is it their best film? I don't know, because they're so sort of diverse in their tastes and style that it's hard to pick one particular film. But Fargo is it's perfect, and it's one of the most visually amazing films, I think, and with the atmosphere and the music. And it's had a longer lasting effect on me as a writer and a director than Pulp Fiction did. Pulp Fiction kind of launched my sort of brain into that mode, and I felt it was kind of like hearing an amazing rock song, and wanted to dance to it all the time. But Fargo really kind of got into my soul a bit, and just it's if I Dead on the Vine, my film, if there was going to be any film that's going to be the biggest influence, it would be Fargo.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, Fargo's interesting, isn't it? Because I don't think they'd done a film like that before, did they? And it's quite a sort of hard film to put into a specific genre because it's very satirical, and like the way she talks about, I mean, obviously, hopefully everyone's seen it by now. If they haven't, go watch it first and come back because it's a spoiler. But just like, there's just like these funny bits that creep in. It's just like when she talks about, they have to go back to the sites where there's been the executions, and she's just so casual talking about it.
I mean, her character, it's an amazing invention.
Yeah.
And that's the brilliance of the film, is this total mix of tones into one beautiful, weird tone. Again, like Tarantino, they just build this world where these characters live and they speak their own sort of language in a way, and everything sort of seems normal despite it being weird and heightened, and it's that kind of the comedy, the kind of slightly jaunty comedy.
Yeah.
Sitting next to the brutal violence and the real massively dark morals.
Well, that's it, isn't it? It's like it's sort of on the line of being a thriller. It's very gritty, and some of the scenes are sort of quite out there. But then there's these periods and these bits of pure comedy, and it just sort of kind of switches from both these different things going on at the same time, which is really clever. And she was really good in it, wasn't she? She won like the best actress at the Oscars.
Oscar, yeah.
And I mean, she's done a lot of stuff with them, and obviously she's married to one of them. I can't remember which one it is. Do you know who it is? Joel.
Yeah.
And she's done a lot of stuff with them before. Like she was in Raising Arizona. She had a small part in that. Like she was
she was in their first film.
Oh, was she?
Yeah.
No, she's an amazing actress. And then she did one recently, which she's been nominated for Best Actress, where she's basically not homeless, but she's kind of like a nomad traveling around in her
Nomadland.
That's it. Yeah.
Her third Best Actress win at the Oscars.
Oh, so she did win that award.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, she's an amazing actress.
So I mean, Fargo, absolutely brilliant film, and it was one of those ones I was really into the Oscars back then. It was like a massive thing for me. I would stay up all night and watch them, and that was like I remember like 3 years in a row, and this might give away one of my other choices, but it was like the three best screenplay wins was Pulp Fiction, Usual Suspects, and Fargo, and it was just a glorious time to be someone who wanted to make films.
Yeah, well, they're all amazing films. I mean, I've got to re-watch The Usual Suspects again, but every time I watch that, it just, I mean, I kind of envy someone who watches it for the very first time in their complete naivety, because
Yeah,
it just takes you completely off course, and you're just basically being thrown all these red herrings along the way. And then and there's another spoiler coming up, but he's basically been staring at you in the eye from the very beginning. And it's just like, I just remember those posters were absolutely everywhere.
Yeah, it was again iconic, wasn't it? And it was. I mean, that's my number three anyway.
Okay.
Usual Suspect, number three.
Okay, so number three.
Again, it was my introduction to Christopher McQuarrie, who obviously is a huge director now, but he became one of my hero screenwriters from after The Usual Suspects, because I remember getting the screenplay. I used to buy all the screenplays. And his foreword, and it was just fantastic. And the way he spoke about film was fantastic, and so intelligent, so easy to digest without being pretentious. And so again, when that won, I was just like, amazing. And it was one of those films where it just changed the way I thought about
filmmaking,
films, how I want to make them. Because Christopher McQuarrie's his writing it's sort of sparse yet incredibly rich, and there, like it's like every line is amazing. Every line's like a piece of information, and the way he establishes characters, with particularly in The Usual Suspects, where it's just here's these guys, and you just get these incredibly distinct characters so quickly. So, and then there's all the turning on the head of everything, and the twisting of the plots, and which blew my mind at the time. I couldn't.
Did you expect that? I mean, were you when you first saw it? I mean, I saw it when I was 26, so that was way after, obviously, because it was probably 2007 I saw it. And that was on DVD, and even then I remember that was the first time I'd watched it, and I was completely, like, you kind of left sort of totally baffled, and you're like, well, I've just been fed a load of lies, basically. Do you know what I mean? They take you down so many different routes.
Yeah,
it's so clever.
Because it did get me, and I saw it in the cinema, and
which must have been amazing.
I just came out just playing it over in my head, the whole thing, and I think, did I go and see it again? I remember being obsessed with it for a while. It was the first DVD commentary that I ever heard.
Okay.
Because it wasn't a DVD. That's the weird thing about it. It was video.
Okay.
It was VHS with an extra VHS for the commentary.
Oh, wow.
It had two big chunky videotapes.
Wow.
The Bryan Singer and Chris McQuarrie commentary, which was excellent. And Bryan Singer has kind of disappointed me in so many ways.
Yeah.
Aside from a couple of good X-Men films, but don't want to dig into his weird stuff. But
yeah, he's had a bit of a.
It's like that cast
is amazing.
It's such a spectacular cast. And
it is.
Half of them have never been that good again. Like Stephen Baldwin has never been in anything good since then, and he's gone a bit mad.
He's gone a bit mad.
Kevin Pollak, he's a great actor, but he's never been given a role like that ever again. He's always just these little supporting roles. And obviously Kevin Spacey went off and was Kevin Spacey for a while, and now he's Kevin Spacey.
Yeah, well, he's obviously, all that stuff came out about him. But I mean, I think in the 90s, that was probably his best period as well, wasn't it? Because he was in Seven and that.
Yeah, he had a great period then.
He did.
He was Seven, swimming with sharks.
That was it.
Albino Alligator, and obviously culminating in American Beauty in 1999.
That was a really good one as well.
Yeah, it was, and he was a good actor. I was very sad when I found out that horrendous human being.
Yeah.
So, but I guess so. What I'm saying is that cast lives in my head as the usual suspects. And, even Benicio del Toro, who's so completely different to anything else he's ever done.
Yeah. Because he just mumbles his whole way. But I mean, and he was meant to die halfway through the film anyway, didn't he? So he's actually a relatively small part. But he made it.
But he made it so.
Oh, I know. He was so big in that, even for sure, he's amazing.
In the script, he's like a 55-year-old man who speaks perfectly well.
Oh, really?
So everything. My character was Benicio del Toro, who just came up on the day and was like, "I'm going to do it like this."
Mumbles.
Yeah.
So was he saying "flip you in the back"?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, flip you.
And so flip you.
Brilliant. So yeah, I mean, as a writer as well, just the intricacies and the thing of the script is just amazing. And Gabriel Byrne, who I think is one of the more underrated.
He's a really good actor, actually. It's a shame he didn't do any. I mean, he's been successful in that he's managed to keep working as an actor, and he's been in some high-profile films and some obviously indie-type films. But I think that was probably his sort of standout film in the mainstream, wasn't it? I mean, they were all really good at that.
He's done a load of really good stuff, but I think The Usual Suspects is one of the ones he'll be remembered for.
Yeah.
You should read his autobiography. It's mad, or listen to it rather.
Oh, really?
I'm listening to the audio book. Yeah, he reads it like he reads it himself, and it's the whole thing is read as if it's some beautiful Irish poem.
Oh, really?
It's really strange. It's so lyrical and kind of funny, but it's a bit hard to take at times because I'm thinking he's still talking as if he's walking through a meadow.
Yeah.
But it's really good, and The Usual Suspects, it seems, was a bit of a game changer for him because he had a load of credibility in England and stuff, but America, he found it very difficult. Didn't like America.
Did he not?
No, he found the whole thing a bit too
much
pressurized.
And everyone remembers that poster, didn't they? Because that poster was iconic. It was kind of like, I don't know if this is going to go on to one of the other ones later, but it was kind of like Train Spotting. Nobody had ever seen a poster like that before when they're doing the lineup, which is another thing I'll bring up in a bit.
Yeah, it did kind of establish this. It was you knew what that was. It was like Train Spotting, and they somehow managed to get this iconic image, the right look, the right people standing in the right way, and it's just when those beautiful things come together. Because it's not often, other than Train Spotting, really, where you kind of get those people just stood side by side like that. Because here's the characters. I'm not going to tell you anything what that's about, other than these guys are quite dodgy.
Yeah. And I can't remember, but I remember seeing once because it was always in the train stations, and I used to see it on the way to school, obviously, or on the way back from school. And once there was one of the posters, somebody drew an arrow and put, it's him.
That's just so cruel.
That's really mean.
Someone did that to me with Seven. When Seven came out, they went, "Oh yeah, Kevin Spacey's he did it." And I was like, "What?
Why did he do that?"
I know, because I remember Kevin Spacey saying that he insisted on his name being taken off.
Well, he was all ninja, didn't he? He went completely ninja. Nobody knew, and then at the end, obviously, I think it was like halfway when they reveal that he's John Doe. And he said, "There's Kevin Spacey," but he didn't do any of the press interviews or anything.
Completely kept out of it, and as they say, there's no credit at the beginning to say he's even in the film, and yeah.
But was that something to do with the fact that The Usual Suspects kind of came at the same time, or was it just him being strange and different?
No, I think it was Kevin Spacey's decision to just keep himself out of it, so people wouldn't guess that he was the villain because he won the Oscar for Usual Suspects, so I guess he was getting a reputation for being
a bit typecasted. Yeah.
Give me a film, you go, "Oh, that's the baddie. Then there's the serial killer right there."
Yeah. There was another thing I was going to bring up about that famous the lineup scene when they all go marching in and they're lining up and they have to say what they say. And they all laugh at one point, don't they? Do you want to tell the story behind that? Do you know the story, or shall I say what the story was behind that?
Yeah, it was them cracking up, wasn't it? It was like did someone fart?
It was
Something like
Benicio del Toro. So they just come back from after lunch and they started filming that scene, and he farted, and they all burst out laughing. And then after that, they just couldn't stop laughing. And so when it came to that take, that was the only kind of one where they burst out into laugh, but they went back into character straight away. And that's why it works really well, because it's just, you don't think of it like that, do you? You don't think, oh, someone's just farted and they've gone back. But it's just a really clever moment. And he was apparently really losing his temper with them as well.
I can imagine. But yeah, because like, it establishes them as a team, as a group that's of the same sensibilities, and even Keaton, Gabriel Byrne's character, who's meant to be going straight, but even he's kind of like in there having a laugh with him,
Yeah. And they kind of set him up. I mean, this is obviously a big spoiler, but I mean, I'm sure by now everyone's seen it. And if you haven't, don't watch this, don't listen to this bit. But they set him up as being Kaiser Soze, don't they? So that's another very good red herring that he throws at everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I never believed that he was, to be honest.
Did you not?
Gabriel Byrne thought he was Kaiser Soze until the end.
Until
he he's like, but I'm Kaiser Soze.
Which is so clever, the revelation that the detective is basically falling for a load of his crap, and he's just been basically looking around the office, looking at the poster, the cards and the posters in the background, and making up names like Kumbayashi, which is at the bottom of his mug and stuff. And at the end, when you realise, when the photo comes out of not the photo, the drawing of the description of him, and it's like the match with him, and then he walks out, obviously because he has, is it cerebral palsy, and it's so he's and then towards the end his walk completely transforms and his fingers are no longer like stuck together, and you're just like, what? And then it's just amazing the way it ends.
Because his name means verbal as well, Kaiser Soze.
Oh, does it really?
Yeah.
And wasn't that his?
That's in Hungary or wherever he's meant to be from. I can't remember where.
Turkish, isn't he?
Yeah, possibly Turkey. I think.
Yeah.
So they had to change his name in the Turkish version, so it wasn't given away completely straight at the beginning.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Yeah, if it's basically a complete translation of verbal Kent, then it would throw it away from the very beginning. You're like, oh, like that. So I guess that's where the translation bit would come in not very useful. But wasn't Kaiser Soze, isn't that the name of his friend or something, Brian Singer's friend, or a lawyer?
Yeah, it was Kaiser Souchet.
Oh, right, okay.
With the name, and so they like the Kaiser, they like the sound of it, and then they changed it to Soze. I can't remember why they changed it to Soze.
Yeah.
Souchet. Yeah, like David Suchet, but I don't know how you say it, but it is Suchet.
And that's such a cool name, isn't it, for a bad guy, Kaiser Soze? It's not like, I don't know, David something.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's like, there's a Robert De Niro's character in Heat called Neil, and like,
doesn't work.
Val Kilmer's character in Heat is Chris as well. So, like,
doesn't work as well. Is there anything you want to say about The Usual Suspects before you crack on to number 2?
No, I think we're done with The Usual Suspects. So.
Okay, so let's go on to your number 2.
So my number 2 is the first 18 that I saw as a 14-year-old. I think it was a 14, 15-year-old. And I'm going to sneak in behind my cousin Rachel. And okay, I was there, but I was just stood behind her, so I didn't look. So I was just trying not to look like I was massively underage. And so this is my favorite film of all time.
Okay.
It's not my number 1 because
but it's very
the number
close.
1 has a continued impact on where I work much more than this one.
Okay.
So anyway, And number two is The Crow.
Ah, okay. Why The Crow? Do you know what? To be honest, I never saw it, but I just remember all the news that came out after he sadly passed away. So why
Yeah, I mean,
The Crow?
well, because back in the day, I was it was a film that my cousin was a big goth,
Mm.
and I wasn't a goth, but I liked all that kind of music. I liked black hair and stuff like that, and I liked comics. I still do, you know, I love the look of Brandon Lee in that. I thought this looks cool, and I went and saw it, and it was the same kind of feeling I had when I first saw Highlander. And Highlander, up until that point, was my favorite film
Okay.
until I saw The Crow, and it's just this incredible sort of visual style that if you go to Alex Proyas, the director's Facebook page, he'll show you how many people have copied him since then.
Oh, really?
including Christopher Nolan, the Wachowskis, everything. You know, it's just the Crow. There's like literally frame for frame rip-offs of it, and it's interesting. So you know, I mean, it's kind of a silly film. I think it's a beautifully sort of sad and lyrical film that happens to be incredibly violent and kind of overblown. But I think the style is amazing. I think it's one of those performances from Brandon Lee where you go, all right, he's good. He's going to be a star. I mean, I'm not talking like Oscar-worthy acting, but just, you know, sheer presence, you know. And
then sadly,
so many of my favorite actors in it at the time. These are kind of character actors that you know you didn't see in that many things, like David Patrick Kelly, who's fucking hell, I've forgotten what his name is now in
no, I don't know.
In The Crow. He's the one who stubs the cigarette on his tongue.
Okay.
And he's from Commando, 48 Hours, and all sorts of great kind of 1980s films.
Okay.
Oh, he's in The Warriors as well. He's in The Warriors as the guy. He says, Warriors.
And, I know you took. Yes, I've seen. I remember seeing a clip from that, and he's banging some glasses or something together.
That's right. Yeah,
that's it. Yeah, so he's a very good actor.
He's just a brilliant actor, and I love seeing him in anything. And then Michael Wincott, who's one of the great villains. He was just everywhere around this time because he'd just done the guy Gisborne in the Three Musketeers with Kiefer Sutherland and Charlie Sheen, and then he was obviously he wasn't Guy Gisborne, he was Rochefort, and then he was Guy Gisborne in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves with Kevin Costner, and
who was the one that was in 24, the season 1? Because he was in as well, wasn't he? He was the one who basically his character shoots Brandon Lee, and then that was forever what haunted him because that was obviously the bullet.
Oh, that's the thingy. That's
Michael.
He's got a funny name.
Madsen,
he's just died.
Yeah, he died quite recently. He was also in Seven very briefly as well.
Yeah, he was the guy in the sex booth, wasn't he?
Yeah. He's got an amazing face. So he has a very sort of very good villain type face. He's a really good.
Yeah, he kind of looks like he's halfway been a zombie already.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was great. He was great, and they were all great. You know, everyone in that film, you know, it was so well cast. And the soundtrack was just, it is, in my opinion, still the best soundtrack that has ever existed. Just the Cure's best song had like amazing 9 Nails, For Love Not Lisa, and Jesus and Mary Chain, My Life with the Thrill Kill Cult, which is I think my favorite name for a band. Henry Rollins, and it's just everything about that film was just so me. And I pretty much went as the Crow for every Halloween up until for the next decade.
Oh, really? So that was your costume.
Yeah, it kind of suited me. I was a long-haired, skinny person. It was an easy one for me to pull off, and so yeah, it was just one of those films that I thought, this is my favorite film now. This is my new favorite film, and it has remained so. It's not the best film, but it is my favorite.
Yeah,
and it was the first 18 that I saw, so it was kind of a watershed.
Okay,
it was the first 18 on the cinema. I mean, I'd seen like American Wealth in London and Terminator and stuff when I was like 6 or 7 years old. So yeah, The Crow. It is a rock song of a film. You know, it's
definitely
short,
got a gothic vibe to it, doesn't it? It was very dark, and that poster was iconic as well.
Yeah, and I mean, they tried to make some sequels, and they were all Absolute horseshit.
Who was the second one? I can't remember who was in the second one.
The second one should have been good because it was Vincent Perez, very good French actor.
Yeah.
He was great, and it had Iggy Pop in it, and
Iggy Pop.
Just basically, yeah, Iggy Pop was one of the villains in it.
That is so random.
But it just copied the first one, but made it all yellow, and
Did it work?
It was just shit. It was just rubbish. It was just kind of like one of those. It was like a rehash of the first one without.
Yeah.
First one was, I think, it was a brilliant. It was a brilliant kind of convergence of Alex Proyas, the director, and his visual style, which was massively suited to it. And then, James O'Barr wrote the comic. It was, that comic was just fantastic. And I think the second one wasn't really based on a particular Crow comic,
Yeah.
And then, Brandon Lee, obviously, he's coming into his own after a load of kind of
flops,
mostly crap,
yeah,
except rapid fire martial arts films. And he's kind of coming out of his dad's shadow, I guess.
Well, that must have also been extremely hard because, I mean, his dad was so famous. It's just unfortunate that they both died very young, and it was just a tragic accident for both of them, which is the sad thing. But yeah, that would have probably made him into a star, I would have imagined, if that didn't happen.
I said that his next film was going to be Mortal Kombat.
So
he signed on to be Ken, I think, in Mortal Kombat. And, is it Ken? Ken and Ryu? Or was that Street Fighter?
Okay, I don't know.
Anyway, he was meant to be in Mortal Kombat.
Okay.
I think that's Street Fighter. But he was meant to be in Mortal Kombat with Christophe Lambert from Highlander.
Mm-hmm.
And he died, so he didn't do that. So I feel there is a silver lining. That is it, because I don't think Mortal Kombat would have kicked on his career.
No, I think, The Crow would have probably been, I reckon, his most memorable film if he obviously hadn't have passed away anyway.
Yeah, and it was a big hit at the time as well. It was one of the films that kind of made Miramax.
Oh, really?
So yeah, it led the way for them to be able to finance other films like Pulp Fiction and stuff, because it was quite a low budget film for what it was.
Yeah.
Alex Proyas made it look amazing.
So it did really well for the budget.
It was one of the most profitable comic book films. It was the most profitable 18 rated comic book films.
Yeah. All right, so let's crack on to number one.
Blade took it off.
Oh, right. Sorry.
So The Crow. Anyway, that's my number 2.
Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. So quickly go on to the number one slot. Shall I do the drum roll? Boom, 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 boom. Oh, it's not. So your number one is
Henry Fool.
Okay, I never heard of that. Why Henry Fool?
Henry Fool, it's by Hal Hartley, who he kind of came to prominence the same time as all the other indie filmmakers, and he is a true indie filmmaker. He's still making films to this day that are 100% independent. He tried crowdfund his last film, but then the pandemic hit. Henry Fool is my favorite of all Hal Hartley's films. It's basically, not many people have probably seen it. It did win big at Cannes that year, I believe. But anyway, it's basically about this dustbin man played by the brilliant James Urbanike, and he's just completely a nothing person, this like sort of empty vessel of a human being who's got this weird family, like Parker Posey's his sister, and then one day this guy turns up to live in the basement called Henry Fool, and he's this incredibly, he's the exact opposite. He's this incredibly garrulous guy who just won't stop talking, a fantasist. He inspires James Urbanike character, Thingy Grimm. Shit, what's his first name? Simon Grimm.
Okay.
To write, and so he ends up writing this sort of incredibly long poem. And every time anyone reads this poem, it like affects them in like mad ways. Like this woman who's never spoken starts to sing. People start crying or fighting or whatever, and it's like. You never find out what's in the poem, really.
No.
But it's just, so this is like, at the same time, Henry Fool is trying to get his memoirs published. His memoirs that are going to blow the literary world wide open and, sort of reveal national security secrets, all sorts of things, because he implies that he's a spy. It's Hal Hartley at his finest. Hal Hartley is like none of the other filmmakers of his of his time. He's kind of coming from a different angle. His style is completely much more minimalist. His dialogue is so sparse, and it's mostly just people sort of almost just looking at each other, kind of very Robert Bresson kind of thing. But they're also really funny, really dark, funny. The character of Henry Fool is hilarious. He's just this completely amoral person who he just lives within his own vices of just booze, coffee, sex, and everything. And played amazingly by Thomas J. Ryan, who isn't in many things really. He's more of a Broadway actor, but he's got this spectacular voice. He's got like my favorite voice in cinema, I think. And so, yeah, when I saw Henry Fool, I saw it a lot later. I saw it in university, I think. So it must have been out for 7 or 8 years by this point, I think. So I think 1994, I think, Henry Fool.
Okay.
And 1994 is the best year of film ever. And it just changed the way I thought about film again. Because going from the incredible amount of dialogue and overblown sort of style of Quentin Tarantino to the exact opposite, whereas everything was so kind of mundane and words were so powerful in this because the usage of them was so. I mean, the whole film is about words, and it just made me want to write differently. It just made me want to think about like different things, and it did change my brain, I think.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those films that at the time it wasn't my number one film or wasn't even close to the top 10. It just stayed with me forever, and it's just every year it just got higher and higher and higher. And so now I put it in top three favorite films ever, I think.
Okay.
And so if you haven't seen it, I'd recommend it. It's Hal Hartley doesn't really get cinema releases over here anymore, but you can get Henry Fool on DVD.
Okay. That's definitely something I have to watch because I never heard of it, but I'll give that a go for sure.
It's great. It's my film Guardians, my debut feature film. It's not really like Henry Fool, but I got the actors to watch Henry Fool.
Yeah.
Particularly my friend David, who plays a particularly garrulous character in my film Guardians, and I was like, watch this guy. This guy is sort of
kind of like
in a way what I'm kind of aiming for.
And
so I hope it was useful.
Oh, that's really good. Okay, thank you so much, Mark, for joining us today, and I hope you get better soon.
Thanks a lot. Me too. Thanks for having me. It's been great fun.
It has been great fun. Take care, and hopefully we'll talk soon at some point.
Brilliant. Thanks. Okay. See you later.
Bye.